turning point arrives the moment a man realizes he's been living beneath his own potential. It hits quietly at first, like an uncomfortable truth pressing against the mind. Suddenly, the habits that once felt harmless start revealing themselves as anchors, not comforts. The distractions that once numbed now feel insulting. The excuses that once justified stagnation begin sounding hollow. This realization is not pleasant. It shakes the identity. But buried inside that discomfort is a call, a demand, a recognition that life isn't waiting for readiness. Something inside begins to whisper that the current version of self is temporary and that a higher standard is no longer optional. Growth begins in that moment, not through motivation, but through dissatisfaction sharpened into direction. A man discovers purpose through friction. The struggles, the setbacks, the embarrassments, the failures that seemed unfair, all of them were shaping him. Not in the dramatic, cinematic way motivational slogans pretend, but in the slow, grinding way reality works. Pain exposes weakness. Resistance forces adaptation. Adversity compresses character until only the essential remains. Every hardship becomes a mirror, showing exactly what needs to be confronted. Avoidance delays evolution, confrontation accelerates it. Those who embrace discomfort learn faster than those who escape it. And as the lessons compound, clarity emerges. Strength is not inherited, it is engineered. Identity becomes the product of every difficult moment that did not break him. Growth demands sacrifice. The life a man wants requires the death of the life he's been protecting. Comfort, old habits, useless relationships, and numbing routines must be left behind. Not because discipline is trendy, but because those attachments drag him backwards. Transformation requires subtraction long before addition. The man who refuses to let go of old versions of himself remains imprisoned by them. But once he begins releasing dead weight, even slowly, a shift occurs. Energy returns, focus sharpens. The future stops looking like a dream and starts feeling like an obligation. The sacrifice is not punishment. It is the price of entry into a life of intention. Responsibility becomes the catalyst, not the forced kind society imposes, but the voluntary kind that defines a man's direction. Real responsibility is choosing to govern one's own behavior, emotions, finances, and future. It is the opposite of victimhood. It is the rejection of blame as a philosophy. Once responsibility is embraced, excuses lose their power. A man stops waiting for circumstances to improve and begins improving himself instead. This shift in accountability breeds control. Control breeds confidence. Confidence breeds momentum. Responsibility, far from being a burden, becomes liberation. The moment a man realizes he can shape his destiny rather than react to it. Discipline becomes the backbone of change. Not the glamorous kind shown in montages, but the quiet, repetitive kind built in unremarkable mornings. The version of masculinity that transforms lives is not fueled by intensity. It is powered by consistency. Discipline rewires the nervous system to choose long-term gain over short-term comfort. It teaches the body to act without negotiating with emotion. The disciplined man becomes reliable to himself. He stops breaking promises made in silence. This self-trust is rare and powerful. Once built, it becomes impossible to destroy. It forms the foundation upon which ambition turns into achievement. Direction emerges from solitude. Isolation, the stage most men fear, becomes the workshop where the real identity is forged. Without noise, without validation, without comparison, a man is forced to confront what he truly wants. Solitude removes the masks worn to fit into social expectations. In that silence, clarity appears. He begins to see what must be built, what must be released, and what must be endured. Loneliness becomes optional once purpose takes its place. Time alone, once painful, becomes necessary. It becomes the sanctuary where strategy replaces doubt and intention replaces insecurity. Adversity evolves into fuel. A man who has been through enough darkness stops fearing it. Every loss becomes a reference point for future resilience. The storms no longer intimidate because he has survived worse. Pain transforms from enemy to instructor. Failure becomes data. Betrayal becomes redirection. Hardship becomes proof of capacity. As these experiences accumulate, something shifts within him. He stops looking for an easy path and begins looking for the path that grows him. When difficulty appears, he no longer asks, "Why me?" He asks, "What does this prepare me to become?" That shift in mentality is the birth of power. Momentum begins to build once the inner architecture is set. Small routines create large changes. Daily actions begin compounding into undeniable results. The man who once felt lost now moves with intention. His posture changes. His voice steadies. His decisions sharpen. He no longer chases validation because he carries internal evidence. Environments respond differently to him. People treat him differently because he treats himself differently. Momentum creates a gravitational pull. Opportunities, respect, and alignment begin forming around him. What once felt impossible now feels inevitable. Evolution demands that a man stop living reactively. He must move from instinct to intention, from impulse to strategy, from avoidance to engagement. This shift requires emotional control, not emotional suppression. The mature man learns how to feel without being directed by feeling. He learns to observe anger, fear, insecurity, and desire without becoming enslaved to them. Emotional mastery becomes the silent advantage, allowing him to make decisions that shape his future rather than sabotage it. This maturity is not taught by lectures, it is carved through lived experience. Every painful season becomes a teacher in emotional intelligence. Eventually, a moment arrives where a man looks back and realizes the journey reshaped him into someone he once doubted he could be. Not perfect, not invincible, but capable, grounded, driven by principle instead of impulse and purpose instead of craving. The man who emerges from hardship, discipline, solitude, and self-respect is not the same one who began. He carries depth, authority, presence. Not because life got easier, but because he stopped running from responsibility, growth, and pain. The transformation was never accidental, it was earned, and the man he becomes is simply the one he was meant to build all along.